Hello and welcome to the Emperor's New Podcast. I'm your host, Micah Hirsh. Today I am joined by Marc Aquino,
Hello.
Ryan Walterson,
Hey there.
and you may know him as the head of story on The Emperor's New Groove and Brother Bear. You may also know him as the director of Meet the Robinsons and co-director of Winnie the Pooh 2011. You may know him for his new book, The Disney In-Between, and you may know him for working just a little bit on the subject of today's episode, the Garfield movie. Please welcome Steve Anderson.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Yay.
So for
Hey.
those in the audience who may be wondering what the hell Garfield has to do with The Emperor's New Groove, the new Garfield movie that's out now in theaters was directed by Mark Dindal, who directed The Emperor's New Groove. It also, I don't think he was the only writer, but one of the writers in the script, David Reynolds, worked on the script for New Groove, and as I said, Stephen Anderson storyboarded a few scenes, and John Debney did the music for it. So it's basically a mini Emperor's New Groove reunion of sorts, um, which makes it eligible for this podcast.
It's like a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Emperor's New Garth, as some might say.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
Um, we're probably gonna be now it's been a couple weeks since I've seen the movie, so my memory's not super fresh. But I'm probably gonna also like there's some things that reminded me of New Groove and stuff that I'm gonna point out that I remember. Um, the basic premise, this is again going from my memory, is that Garfield is taken by these two hench dogs of this evil cat Jinx. He ends up getting rescued by his father and learns that his father used to be part of like a band of misfits that Jinx was part of. But once they were doing a heist in a dairy farm, and Vic, which is Garfield's father's name, left Jinx behind, and now Jinx wants revenge. So she's trying to get him to steal from the dairy farm uh all the milk for the number of days she was in the pound or whatever you call it. And it's all really just a plan to get Vic in the pound, basically. That sounds really odd when you think
Well done.
probably not the first thing that pops into mind when you think Garfield, but um yeah, that's the basic premise of the movie, and Garfield has to learn to get along with his father and help him with this heist and save the day, basically. That's the plot of the movie. Um, Mark, Ryan, what were your all both what were your your expectations going in, and what did you think of the movie overall?
Well, for one thing, I would say, I mean, I don't know, I can't speak for everyone for the rest of you guys, but like I'm probably of the three of you, I'm probably the one like that's like a between me, Micah, and Ryan, I'm probably the one that's an unironic Garfield fan. Like I've been a fan of the character for many years. One of I remember my parents recording on a VHS the Garfield Christmas special, and
Mm.
I remember seeing that when I was like very very little. And since then, I've always liked the character. I had a whole slew of the compilation books of all the comic strips. I used to draw Garfield all the time. I used to have the old Garfield and Friends series on DVD. Um, yeah, no, I just have a, I and the whole thing in regards to like Garfield's internet presence has been for an unironic fan has been very interesting, but I also find that stuff to be like legitimately funny because it's like
Yeah.
so absurd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, going into this, I was interested in seeing what like a new Garfield movie could be. The big things that really got me to be like, okay, I'll give this a shot was the announcement that Mark Dindal and David Goodman were going to
David
be
Reynolds.
on it.
Sorry.
That was the big thing for me. That was like, okay, if they're the ones doing it, then I'm definitely like cautiously optimistic, because
Yeah.
even if the character is just written to be Kuzco, that's fine by me, because they're not too dissimilar personality wise.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same camp as Micah when it comes to well as Mark when it comes to the my appreciation for Garfield, because I've been a huge fan of the character ever since I was little. Like I grew up with him the same way most people did, through the papers, through the strips, through the specials, through the show. And I'll even admit those live actions and CGI animated hybrids starring Bill Murray. I had the first movie on VHS. Yeah, back when they were still making video cassettes in 2004.
Yeah.
I I had the second one on DVD. But and not that I not and I'm not gonna say those are the most authentic representation of the character, but I can't say they're the worst things I've ever seen either. But when I heard that they but when I heard that they were gonna make like the first theatrical Garfield movie in years, fully animated, I was more than intrigued, because that's where the character shines the best.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
plus, this is at a time where characters like him like sell so well into the market of nostalgia, but also in the fact that it's a property that really hasn't stopped at all, because the CG Garfield show still kept churning until the mid 2010s. There's
Yeah.
still Jim Davis is still putting out strips like pretty much every day. So yeah, I had a feeling that like once this was announced, and then the tip of it all was Mark Dindal and David Reynolds, a nice little reunion there. And plus, this is the first film that Mark Dindal has directed in almost 20 years, because
Yeah.
unfortunately every other project that he's attempted to direct has unfortunately been canceled. A
Yeah.
good example, like even at one point he was involved with one of the most interesting pieces of canceled animation, which was Me and My Shadow for DreamWorks.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, so that's definitely a piece of unfortunate cancellation. But yeah,
Mm.
so going into this, I was very much intrigued, and then when I saw like what the designs would look like, and what the whole conceit of it all being with Garfield's dad, it felt very reminiscent. In some ways, it felt reminiscent of one of the old Garfield specials, Garfield on the Town, with which Garfield actually
Yes.
reunites with
Yeah.
his mother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they basically retcon Garfield's origin story.
There's
um,
like I feel like there's got to be more than one Garfield origin story already.
At
I
this
mean,
at this point, these are all Garfield variants.
Yeah.
yes,
The
yes.
multiverse.
In the multiverse of Garfness,
Into the
there's
Garverse.
there's Earth 78, or if you're quitting reviews, 1975, where he was born in the back alleys of Mama Leone's Italian restaurant, and was immediately put in a pet store after consuming every single speck of pasta in sight. Um, but yeah, no, that this was like, and to be fair, in at the beginning of the movie, they do address that like this is a Garfield story that we've never heard before.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
I think that kind of at least helps in like assuading, the diehard fans. Like trust, like we know this isn't like what you usually would expect from
Mhm.
Garfield, but just give it a shot anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if this ain't your daddy's Garfield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
No, he's ordering his food from apps now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The movie literally starts after the let's say minute and a half worth of production company
Yeah.
logos. We
Like
finally
that
get
family. Someone compared it to a gag on Family Guy that was like
Oh
Peter waiting
yeah,
over and over for the movie to start and thinking it's starting and it keep being logos for studios. But yeah.
That's like every movie these days, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
After those logos, the first image you see is Garfield, Jod, and Odie on a vertical phone screen, where
yeah,
and it's like, wow, they knew that people were gonna watch this movie on their cell phone.
Either that or I can't speak for you, Stephen, but the filmmakers were a fan of the theatrical cut of Justice League in 2017. And they didn't.
Zack Snyder,
Thankfully, they
Zack,
didn't. Thankfully,
Zack
they didn't
Snyder's
digitally
Garfield.
replace Garfield's mouth with something else. So
Yeah, right. Yeah, they had to erase John's mustache.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Why else do you think Lyman wasn't around? Although I did
Um,
catch that little reference. Well, I know we're jumping further into the movie, but like I did catch the reference on John's fridge. There's like a little whiteboard where it has written down "Call Lyman."
Mm.
I don't
That
know,
was good.
Stephen, if you're familiar with the certain aspects of Garfield lore, but there's a ongoing theory that Lyman, who was originally Odie's first owner, that he's secretly chained up in John's basement.
Oh,
There was this old Garfield online set top game called Garfield's Nightmare or something like that, where
there was also a ride with that name and Kennywood.
yeah, there was a ride, but there was
oh
also
yeah.
I believe on like the old Garfield website, they had like set top games for kids to play, and one of them was this like Garfield haunted house game where you could like visit this haunted house and go to all these different levels of like the house, and when you go inside the basement, you see Lyman chained up, at, like medieval style, and I'm like, so that's where he's been since 1981. Okay, but
They
yeah,
were
no,
definitely, I mean, I wasn't there for a lot of the story development and a lot of the little Easter egg placements, but I know just peripherally they were, Mark and the team were really, uh, it was very important to them to make sure they could get as much references to the strip and those characters as possible. Obviously, certain characters got sidelined, but they did sneak in a Liz and a Nermal and
normal
I
jump
didn't know
scare.
about the Lyman joke, but that's funny that they put that in there. So
And
yeah,
most
they were
importantly, Pookie.
Yes, yes,
and
and most
John's a cartoonist. John was also drawing cartoons,
Yes,
which
that was
yeah,
nice.
that was
yeah.
kind of a neat thing to bring back.
And on the topic of like the Easter eggs during the beginning where we see Garfield abandoned as a kitten and you see him going like traveling along to the Italian place. It's a really sweet Easter egg. If you look real close, you see there's a
Oh,
store that
great.
says Lorenzo's Music Store, and
Mhm.
I almost wanted to stand up and clap because that was kind of
Yeah,
beautiful.
I was happy that
Yeah.
they did that, to pay some respect to the original Garfield.
Yeah.
I think there was a Jim's comic shop too. I think
Yeah,
it's
I saw
Oh
that.
yeah.
yeah. And my wife spotted this one and looked it up. But the original date of the first Garfield strip is also like I think it's graffitied onto the wall back in the alley where Garfield is a little baby back there,
Oh
or it's on the
wow.
side of a trash bin or something like that. Somewhere
Yeah.
it
Yeah, I
appears in.
noticed there was like a lot of there were a couple of moments that had where you could see like either the full date of like June 19th, 19 or June 18th, 1978,
Mhm.
or just 1978 or 78. But a lot of those were kind of like mixed in
Yeah,
in a couple of scenes, but
Yeah.
uh,
Um,
it's fun.
who, how come there hasn't been a streaming service that's just cat videos yet for real?
I
I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is. We just haven't looked hard enough.
Yeah, you just just keep TikTok on a loop.
Yeah.
That's how then people can have their own cat flicks at home.
Yeah.
Why pay
Um,
for something you get for free already, right?
so
On
Exactly.
Jinx, what did you all think of Jinx? I liked Jinx a lot. I actually like the
Hmm.
new characters. I'm not as, familiar with Garfield, so a lot of the newer characters, that the more dindly characters, stuck out more to me than the Garfield stuff.
Yeah,
Um, but
Kindly.
A Jinx feels kind of to me like a combination of Yzma and Darla Dimple if you rolled
Yeah.
them in a blender.
Yes. Yeah.
little
I
bit. Yeah.
That's
I
what I
told
was.
Mark that too while I was because I storyboarded a lot of the Jinx stuff, and I told him at one point, I said, "No offense, Mark, but you have this inner diva that you just keep bringing out in all your movies because I'm feeling the DNA of Darla Dimple, and Yzma, both human and cat Yzma in
Yeah.
Jinx. It's like
Yeah.
something about Mark. He's got these
That's
deep
what was missing from Chicken Little, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, there
Yeah,
wasn't there like one
it's true, there
character
was
that
no
was
diva
kind of
character.
similar to like Darla Dimple. I forget her name. I forget the
Like, was it
character's
the Fox?
Foxy
Oh,
Loxy.
Loxy
Yeah.
Yeah.
Loxy.
Yeah,
She was more of a bully than a diva.
yeah, just a high school, no, just a elementary school bully with
Yeah.
braces
Yeah.
and all.
Had that edge to her.
And
Yeah.
then she
Yeah.
gets her entire, brain and personality changed against her will, and that's like framed as like a great thing.
Yeah.
It's
But
funny.
Um,
I
I
going
It's
back
funny
to
as go
oh
on.
no, go ahead, Ryan.
What's funny is because I made a Twitter post a while back about how I noticing a pattern with some of these Mark Dindal the films and their antagonists. I noticed that every scene there's like one scene in each film where you see the antagonist and it has like a glowing red face against a black background. You see it with Darla at one point. You see it with Yzma before you see her cat form. You see it with the aliens once in Chicken Little, and in the first time you see Jinx in this, you see her like glowing from her collar, and you see the again black background. So
yeah.
yeah, he has a thing with his
Yeah.
antagonists.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, he has a type. He has a type.
He does. I'm not.
But
What did you guys think of the mood collar that Jinx had? That came into existence before I got on the movie, and so I don't know how that evolved or anything, but I was wondering how
it
that
was
was going to play
interesting.
because they
It's
don't
one
like
of
spotlight it.
yeah. It was one of those things that like I didn't catch on like immediately like the first scene, but like as the film progressed, I was noticing like, oh, it's one of those like mood things. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's actually
Yeah.
it was actually a really nice little detail, and having it change color from like scene to scene in like different parts of the movie. It's a nice little detail that like again, I feel like most people wouldn't exactly clock in to like immediately, but like as the film goes forward, like the more you notice it, the more it's like, oh, okay. Oh, neat.
Yeah.
Um,
And it opens up all sorts of really nice lighting possibilities, which they took full advantage of, which was really nice. About
yeah.
she could be underlit by so many
Yeah.
different moods and stuff like that.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, I feel like this is also a good time to mention that I believe this is the first animated film to be fully done by Double Negative, was it?
Hmm.
They're mainly known for being a visual effects company. I've seen them listed in the credits of like a slew of movies over the
Yeah.
years. Um, but yeah,
It's not the first fully animated film that they've worked on because they actually did the animation for Nimona and even
Oh,
Ron's
that's
Gone
right.
Wrong and a couple of stuff like that, and they still have a bit of animated projects in the work.
but this is the first one that's like mainly theirs. Um,
Yeah, like credited like DNG animation production. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and I think like the one thing that really stood out for me the most with this movie was the animation, like the
Yeah.
textures with the fur, like the fluidity of like the characters. It really worked, even in like parts where, because like there were a couple moments where like some of the like the redesigns for certain characters I was like, yeah, I mean, I mean, they look fine, but like I guess maybe just because being a purist, you're like it could have looked more like this,
Yeah.
but I think as the movie kept going, I got more used to the character designs. Like I wished Odie's eyes were a bit bigger, but
Mm.
as big as his tongue. But but no, but yeah, the animation I think was like one of the strongest aspects this movie
Yeah, I
had.
agree.
Um, the and also the way that it even kind of like it employs in a few moments like different types of like animation,
Yeah. There's art
different
shifts and stuff.
styles. Yeah,
Mainly during the flashbacks.
yeah,
Yeah.
flashbacks. Yeah,
Yeah, I really loved the how well they captured kind of the fun graphic quality of of drawings,
Yeah.
yeah,
uh, and things like the multiple images of arm, like when Garfield will
Yes.
flail his arms, you get you get like two or three arms staggered in there,
Yeah.
and really like really appealing shapes in the mouth, and like great, like it all feels, it feels like such a cartoon. I should say a comic strip, but it's three-dimensional, and it's moving fluidly, and it's got
Yeah.
great, really great animation. But boy, I was so impressed with how stretchy and pliable everything is, and just great poses. And man, I saw the movie like four times in the span of, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, and I, I just kept finding little details like that in the animation, little things in the scenes that I just go, wow, that's a great, what a great like shape of a finger, or
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
the timing of something, or I just loved what they did with it. So good.
Yeah, same here. The character animation is like what I think excels a lot of the gags to even further, because they,
Well,
because not that CG animation hasn't evolved over the years when it comes to squash and stretch. I mean,
Sure.
because technically this is a Sony release, but it's not a Sony Pictures animation production, but it has sort of that same character animation vibe that stuff like Hotel Transylvania has, where you
yeah.
see how far they're taking the movements of the characters to represent something that's usually only seen in 2D animation, with the way
Yeah.
that everything gets exaggerated and big. And there are some bits of, with the slapstick and a lot of the visual gags, they do stuff that you don't see in 3D often. Like when a
Mhm.
character gets squashed, they'll get like super, they'll do the classic super flat technique, and they get blown up afterwards, and all that stuff. I think they pretty much nailed. And even though this is a comic strip adaptation, but it's not going the exact same route as something like the Peanuts movie, where the Peanuts movie was made to be as direct a translation of the art style as possible, and even
Yeah.
like with the movements based on the television specials. This is more so an amalgamation of them just doing their own thing, while also making it, keeping the Jim Davis aesthetics as much as possible in a traditional CG light.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And going back to what you were saying, Ryan, about this kind of feeling very similar aesthetically to like Hotel Transylvania, in terms of like taking 2D animation styles and tropes and putting it in 3D computer animation. I mean, I think that it helps that like much like Mark Dindal, Jenny Tarakovsky started out, of course, in 2D animation. I mean,
Yes.
I feel like the three of us all grew up on the shows that he made,
Yeah.
and when he made that transition to computer animation with Hotel Transylvania, that was, I feel like, his chance to really like push that form of animation by like harkening back, but also like taking those techniques that like we grew up on, and I'm sure he did as well, and putting it through this 3D lens to
Yeah.
really like enhance like the gags and the humor. And I think it's a style that like you don't really see a whole lot in computer animation, which and that's not necessarily like to like put down to computer animation. It's just that a lot of them, I think, tend to really like try to make it feel more grand and more and with more scope.
Yeah.
uh but like in this case, it's like you can it's using the computer as a tool to take these things that like we normally would associate with 2D animation and pushing it even further, while still kind of making it feel familiar.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a scene. This is kind of gonna feel. I wanted to talk about this, but it's gonna seem random. But there's a scene in this movie where like, so some of the scene was posted on like the Garfield Twitter account, the movie's Twitter account. But there's a scene where Garfield jumps on a train, misses, and goes bouncing all over the place. One of the places he lands is a place where there's a used catapult being sold. And
That was one of my favorite gags.
that
Yeah.
felt very giant. That felt very much like a trampoline salesman
Yes.
type.
Yes,
That's exactly what it reminded me of.
Yeah, one
Yeah.
of my friends who boarded on the movie, that was his gag, and I keep telling him every time I see somebody post about it, or so I or when we've seen the movie in the theater and people laugh at that, I keep telling him the catapult gag, gotta laugh. Your gag, gotta laugh.
Nice.
Yeah. Um, there's also a literal scene where they in the near the climax where they're falling onto a net and they bounce off the net. Um,
Yeah.
that also
And
made me think
a
of that.
cat falling from a high height, going
Yeah.
bah!
Yeah.
She falls. Another he's my kitty.
Yeah.
Um, and I love the designs of Nolan and Roland. I
Mm.
don't I think is Roland the big Sharpay?
Yeah,
I
I
can't
was told
Yeah.
the way to remember it is that Roland has rolls.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That
he's the big
immediately was
Sharpay.
like, oh, that's
I love his that he's just this big he's basically like Kingpin basically. Um
Yeah.
but a dog.
Yeah. And I love the voice, the people they got for those two characters, Brett Goldstein and Bowen Yang, I believe, was the
Yeah.
other.
Yes.
I mean, this movie had like multiple, cast members from SNL and Ted Lasso. You had
Yeah.
Hannah Waddingham as Jinx.
Hmm.
Um, like I said, Brett Goldstein as Roland, Bowen Yang as the other dog, and Cecily Strong as the security lady from that worked
Yeah.
in the milk factory.
Yeah.
It's funny when I heard she was cast, I could have sworn that I was thinking, she would make for a good Arlene. But you
Yeah.
know, but yeah, no, this is a very interesting cast, and I know a lot of people haven't really talked about him specifically, but I really liked the casting of Nicholas Hoult as John.
Yeah.
It feels very
Yeah.
like keeping with like a lot of the characters that he's played in live action.
I
Like,
really loved this is just something that I thought of. It doesn't really have anything to do with this movie other than he's in it. I really loved Renfield. That's a really fun movie.
yeah, yeah, like like
Garfield, Renfield.
he's
Yeah.
very he tends to play characters that are basically like pushovers that are like
Yeah.
easy that are like these like
I
characters
mean,
that are
that's
just
the entire plot
they're
of
basically
Renfield. It's
wimps.
him
and
overcoming that.
and who is John Arbuckle if not like the king of the wimps?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like casting somebody like him for the role I thought was really inspired. um are we going to do we think we should address the Chris Pratt of it all, or what
Yeah.
do you guys want to do?
Um, he's
Well, it's
fine. That's my
yeah.
opinion.
He's 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 Chris Pratt. He does his job. And I do not mean this in a disrespectful way at all. He's clearly not the first person anyone would think to
Except Mark
voice
Dindal, apparently.
Garfield, except
Supposedly.
for Mark. But for the average Garfield fan or the average movie goer, he's not
Yeah.
the first person you would expect. But when you watch
Yeah.
it, he's given it his all with a lot of the deliveries. Because I've always for like I mean it's been 10 years since like the Lego movie, and I've always
Yeah,
appreciated him as a voice actor for like
Yeah.
because it brings him like a lot of his great comic timing and a lot of his great deliveries.
And
yeah,
some people were just upset because he doesn't sound like Lorenzo Music. It's like that's never bothered me. Lorenzo Music is just doing his normal voice. So to
Yeah.
have the
Yeah.
new guy just
yeah,
do his normal voice
Yeah.
kind of makes sense.
I mean, yeah, like Bill Murray was doing his natural voice too, but that's because well, he himself sounds like Lorenzo Music because Lorenzo
Yeah.
Music voiced Peter Venkman, and Peter Venkman was played by Bill
yeah,
Murray, and then Bill Murray played Garfield. So it's a
yeah,
whole catapult,
Yeah.
full
A
circle.
catapult. A used catapult.
Ah,
there you go, there you go. It's the
oh,
it's the Garfield Aurora Borealis
yeah.
essentially.
Aurora Borealis.
Arlena Borealis. I don't know.
Arlena
Arlena
Or Buckle
Arlena
Odialis.
Borealis.
Borealis. Um,
I mean, what's funny,
so
you bring up Nicholas Hoult is, of course, this movie came out the exact same day as Furiosa, so it's kind of
Yeah,
hilarious in retrospect that yeah, John is being voiced by a war boy.
yeah, that was the weekend I coined as the Garfiosa weekend. Last year we had Barbenheimer, this year it's Garfiosa.
Or as somebody posted, lasagna Taylor Joy. That
That's a
cracked
good
me
one.
up.
That's a good one.
Um, Snoop Dogg plays a cat in this.
Oh
Yes, he
yeah.
That was
Yeah.
a big marketing thing. I saw a lot,
Yeah.
like in the trailers and posters and stuff that just said Snoop Dogg as a cat.
Yeah. Parentheses as a cat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't
Very cool.
blink and
He
you'll
had
miss
a.
him.
So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just said blink and you'll miss him, or because he's got like what,
Yeah.
maybe
He's
10 seconds of
he's
screen time.
he's the Porcupine of the film, the character that they market all over the place, but he's in it for like 2 seconds.
Yeah,
And they both say yo.
Yeah.
that's true. That's true.
And he does. Snoop does does get a piece on the soundtrack. He's in
Right.
the ending song with Keith Urban.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was how they enticed him to work on the film, is to give him a little voice part
Yeah.
there.
I
Yeah.
love I love compared to the other Chris Pratt animated movie that everyone's familiar with that came out recently. Uh
Onward.
what?
No, I said
Oh,
the recent Chris Pratt movie Onward.
yeah, sure. I like that this did was not full of needle drops that felt out of
Mhm.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like
I know
no
that was a
like
big.
really like notable needle drops, I would say.
Yeah, I remember that was a big thing that bothered a lot of people about Mario, was
Mhm.
that it was full of needle drops, and this is all, or at least as far as I can remember, it's all original music
Yeah.
and songs.
For
Um,
the most part, there's like the only one that stuck out to me was a scene where they, because it's an obligation for every comedy to play this. Let's get it on. I can
Yeah.
feel it try.
Marvin Gaye.
They yeah.
That's such a weird joke. I was always surprised that they did that, but
and this
Well,
movie
and
references
that's how it got a PG rating.
I
Yeah.
two different.
guess they were trying to age it
Another
up.
thing that I see people on Twitter being really confused about, or in some cases, apparently it ruins the movie for them or something, which I think is kind of ridiculous. There's a couple references to Tom Cruise movies in this.
Oh,
Well, the fact that they have Ving Rhames as the bull, basically
Exactly.
describing their plan to break into the factory with the Mission Impossible theme playing over it. It's just it like that's the kind of gag that again it is very cartoony, where it's like you literally have one of the folks from Mission Impossible doing a Mission Impossible parody within this. Like
Yeah.
that's a very cartoony idea, which I that was one of my favorite parts of the movie.
I was
Yeah.
kind of surprised that with Ving Rhames they didn't do some sort of inside joke going, "We have the meats" or something like that.
We have the lasagnas.
Where was our Garfield Arby's corporate tie-in?
Yeah, right. We
Uh,
have the milk.
yeah, exactly.
um, what was I gonna say? I don't remember. Oh, and there's also a scene where like Top Gun music plays, and he actually name drops Tom Cruise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean both things were popular in the '80s. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, my only real criticism with this movie, and I'm sure that there's reasons for this that could have to do with studio mandating or just any reason. I felt it was a little bit longer than it needed to be.
hmm,
There's a
I
few
could
places you could trim for sure.
Yeah, I think if spoilers, skip to I don't know when, sorry. This is going to be a spoiler for a joke that's near the end but isn't the end, but should have been the end. The joke where John looks at his phone and sees the bill for the drones, and then Garfield looks at the camera and smiles. That would have been a perfect place to end it.
yeah, yeah, that would have worked.
And when speaking of that phone, the phone that has the Walmart.com logo on, can we talk a little bit about the product placement?
Yeah.
Well, here's the
Yeah.
thing. Like Garfield has been on like every type of product known to man. Like
Yeah.
the product placement didn't really like bother me because I'm like, Garfield's been on everything. This is nothing.
Product placement rarely bothers me because like
Yeah.
I don't care. Like I guess yeah, it's kind of cynical that the corporations might have paid them to get their name in there, but it doesn't take me out of the movie because that just establishes, oh, this product also exists in this
Yeah,
movie's world.
yeah, yeah.
I
That's
think it's
all it does.
also, I feel like a lot of people were kind of like, wait, what? It's just because like they don't really see that sort of thing in like animation necessarily.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. When it's product placement and animation, that's when it
Yeah.
gets a little like, huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Like the only one that was like that I actively expected was when John is wearing his headphones in his sleep, and they're
Oh yeah, the
Sony
Sony
branded
headphones.
Well,
headphones
don't
Yeah.
because
isn't
of
don't
course
Sony products appear in every single Sony movie?
for the most
Most of
part.
For
them.
the most part, yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
know that Mitchell's versus the Machines, they have like a Sony camera in that.
Yeah,
Uh,
then the Hotel Transylvania movies, you see the Sony phone. I think it's this is a very specific. I remember in Smurfs 2, there is a scene where Gargamel is trying to hypnotize someone with a Sony tablet.
yeah, and also I feel like the product placement isn't in it as much as people seem to make it out to be.
Yeah. It's
It's
only like
not.
They're quick
three
little
or four
references.
instances, and it's like
Yeah.
very fleeting.
I
Yeah,
feel like
and it's only there's only two men. There's only like one verbal mention of Olive Garden and one on-screen mention of Olive Garden,
yeah,
which is about maybe lesser on par with the Sonic movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if this is like wrong to think this, but sometimes it just feels like people actively don't want to like a movie, so they find things not to like about it.
That can
Sometimes.
happen. That can
Hmm.
happen.
Like most, like the product placement, the plot being too action heavy, those are the ones, and it being the worst Garfield thing ever compared to that some people say compared to like the live action movies, which I know you like, Ryan. Sorry.
I didn't say I was in love with them. I say I grew up with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't get that. I get the, oh, I wish they focused more or had more of these classic comic characters. That's a criticism kind of I can
Yeah.
understand, but there's like a
Yeah.
few that just baffle me, really, honestly.
I
Um,
think the one that was the most surprising to me, not the one, but what I heard repeatedly is people kind of comparing it to uh, things like Spider-Verse or
yeah,
Teenage Mutant Ninja
yeah,
Turtles,
Yeah,
kind of
apples
saying
and
like
oranges,
like
guys.
animation has now um evolved to this place where we can do Spider-Verse, so why are we accepting these silly cartoon movies?
it
It's like
feels like
I think we
it
can
feels
have a
like
world where there's all of these things kind of coexist together.
now
And
this movie had better reception than the Garfield movie did, but it does feel like what I most the few people I've heard say not necessarily negative but not super positive things about the Emperor's New Groove, most of the time it's not what I expect from Disney. It's not this big grand thing because Disney had built up these big masterpieces. I feel like it's sort of a similar thing
Yeah,
where people, except it's Garfield, so why?
yeah,
Well,
you
I
why
You
think
already
that
know
the
the
main
IP isn't
the
a
yeah.
main
big.
takeaway that I have with that kind of criticism, in mentioning like, oh well, it's not into the Spider Verse or it's not Pixar. I'm like, but that's the whole point of animation can be anything. It
Yeah,
is anything
yes.
and everything. It
yeah,
doesn't have to be one specific thing. It can be literally anything you want.
art.
And I think it would be like saying, oh well, the let me think of oh, Jack and Jill. Well, it's not the Godfather, but it's not this either. I'm like, it would be like making that kind of
Yeah,
comparison. Like,
like
look
every
at
live action movie has to be on the level of The Godfather, or every live action movie has
Okay.
to be on the level of Jaws or
Yeah.
something like that. That's
yeah,
that's clearly absurd, and that's not going to be
Yeah.
that's never going to
and it
happen. The same
yeah,
thing with animation, but we like to put our animation in a box, especially here in America, and kind of say it's either it used to be that it's only for families, it's only for kids, and now I appreciate the fact that we are getting movies that are for a huge range of audiences, and we are getting different things like Spider-Verse, and that's great. That doesn't mean the other things should go away. It just
Yeah.
means
Yeah.
we should
No.
continue to add to what
Yeah.
we can produce with animation, and let's make more stories. Let's make different stories. Let's make stories that appeal to even more sections of the audience.
Yeah. It's and it also, I feel like that kind of criticism, it really reinforces that whole thing of like, oh, animation is not that animation is a genre,
Right.
that
Yeah.
that it's like a genre like horror or science fiction or fantasy, where
Exactly.
it's like, you know, Guillermo del Toro, he keeps hammering it home, as he should. Animation is a medium.
Yeah.
It's a format. It can be anything.
Brad
Yeah.
Bird has been saying this for 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a format like that, like, and so that's why I feel like that those kinds of criticisms, to me, it just like you're putting it in a specific box that just me to me it just like it makes no sense, because like once you try to apply that logic to other things, you really start to realize, oh yeah, no, that makes no sense at all.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
What is this Garfield movie? It's a comedy.
yeah,
It's
it's a
an
comedy.
adventure. It's a
Heist.
heist. It's a road trip, and it's an adaptation of a popular IP.
Yeah,
I
yeah, no,
wanted.
it's
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, it's 100% that. It's a comedy. Like that's to me, like that's this movie's genre. It's a comedy.
Yeah.
Just like, Into the Spider-Verse is science fiction, fantasy, action, or
Superhero, if you want to
yeah,
consider that
superhero.
a
Yeah.
genre.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, that too. But yeah, no, that's why I really don't like that kind of criticism, really.
And I think
It
the
just
beauty
infuriates.
of a lot of animated movies is a lot of them have comedy in them, which is
Yeah.
great. Um they don't there there probably could be more serious ones than there are, but I'm not a super serious person, so I'm kind of fine with it.
Mm.
But every once in a while, like they seem to be really popular in the 2000s. They kind of seem to have sort of shifted away from that. You have an animated movie where comedy is the dominant uh tone and genre of the
Yeah,
film.
primarily visual comedy, like a lot of
Yeah.
slapstick and a lot of verbal humor, which is a lot of what Garfield is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also what Mark Dindal does.
Yeah.
Mark Dindal makes cartoons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and I don't mean just the movies that he has directed, but his sensibilities are all about cartoons. That's
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
I wanted to work on it when he invited me to come work on it. I was like, yeah, because it's going to be fun because it's not going to take itself too seriously. There will be heart. There will be really nice moments between the characters, but at the first and foremost, it's going to be a cartoon where we can have a lot of fun with stuff. The rules of the physics can be bent and twisted so we can have people get punched in the face and they just, like you said, Ryan, they just, reinflate and move on. Like you can have fun with that. That we don't always get to see that
Yeah.
anymore in animation because animation has become, I think, sometimes does take us is starting to now take itself a little too seriously, where we do feel like, well, we have to have these lofty ambitions with all of our animated films. But again, and that's what Mark does best, and that's just courses through his veins is cartoons. So
Yeah.
that's why I think it's so refreshing to see it because it is just 100% pure cartoon.
I do think um some reviews are saying, "Oh, the one that bothered me the most is kids aren't gonna remember it or are gonna find it forgiving." I'm like, this review was written by an adult. How do you know what kids are gonna
Right.
think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Um, but I do think in like maybe 10, 20 years, uh people might be more it might it might gain its own cult following,
Mhm.
though clearly
Yeah.
it doesn't need one in order to be successful because it already is making a whole bunch of money.
There's a
Yeah,
lot of animated films that have come out this decade and the last decade that you might not be a fan of, but children of a certain age are probably growing up with it. Like that's the
yeah,
magic of like the Gen Z and Gen Alpha generations that happen to discover or get into this type of stuff that you don't because you're not you're because well you're thinking I don't watch this because it's for children. Well, you're not a children, and the
Right.
children are gonna love this.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like people who like grew up on something who like watched something maybe like 10, 20 years ago that probably were like just like it's whatever. But like, cut to 20 years later and they're like, "Oh, I remember that thing. Oh, I used to love
Yeah.
that." You
I
yeah.
mean,
know?
Emperor's New Groove, that's what happened with
Yeah.
Groove. How long did it take for Groove to like circle back into the pop culture
Yeah.
ethos? When we
Yeah.
first made the movie, I thought nobody's ever going to remember that because it just died a horrible death and the studio kind of buried it and nobody seemed to care. It didn't make any money and it just sort of disappeared. But now, like, cut to even just 10 years ago
Yeah.
and just to see the memes and to see the people
Yeah.
referencing it, it's like that seems to happen in the life of a movie.
So
Is
many
that
people who, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, no, that's it. I'm just trailing off.
So many people who, or not so many people, but many of the people at Disney Animation now, I feel probably grew up with the Emperor's New Groove
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
That's how you get like, Cusco has a speaking role in Once Upon a Studio, which I got to, uh, which Disney's PR was kind enough to let me interview the directors of. Um,
Nice.
uh, there's an episode about their sketch series on Disney Plus has an entire episode on how to draw Cusco as a llama
Oh, really?
specifically. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Um,
just as important, merchandise is pretty constant and
Yeah.
fluent.
Yeah, the fact that there's like
Whether it's yeah.
no,
yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I say this because like there's figures, there's shirts which you can't see, of course, because I'm on a podcast, but I'm wearing a Disney villain shirt that has Yzma
I
on it.
I might put it on YouTube though. You are blurry, so I still don't know if people will be able to see it.
Yeah, yeah, my low resolution beauty.
Yeah. She's next to
I've
Ursula.
seen stuff. I've seen Emperor's New Groove stuff. I mean, I would see stuff at like Hot Topic. There was I think I saw like a girl's tote bag that was shaped like the palace in Emperor's New
Oh,
Groove.
really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
there's
Yeah,
stuff,
gotten
crazy the
stuff that's
amount of
like that.
merchandise, and they didn't
it
do a thing for it when it came out. But
it's
Yeah,
now like the
yeah,
merchandise is crazy.
it's the same thing with like some of the other Disney films of the 2000s. Like stuff like Atlantis and Treasure Planet have a lot of merch at Hot Topic and Box Lunch and all those places that
Yeah.
they did not have to the extent that they did back in 2001, 2002. Not that they didn't have merchandise, but not like merchandise on the level of like, the other Disney movies.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like compared to like I'm sure there was like maybe like stuff for like New Groove and Atlantis at say like the Disney store.
Yeah.
But like compared to like now where like stuff
I
like Frozen
remember.
and Encanto
Yeah.
and Moana where like they just like flood the whole
Oh,
market with
Yeah.
everything that movie.
I remember
um
having a Tiger Electronics Shepherd's Journal. I don't remember if we got it from
Wow.
like Walmart or somewhere else, but that from Atlantis.
cool.
That's what I remember. And they had McDonald's toys. I
I
remember
oh
that.
had
yeah,
some of the
Yeah, I remember
McDonald's toys.
the
I
Emperor's
had
New
Groove
Groove.
had Happy Meal
I
toys.
had the one with Mole like
yeah,
on his
And
drill.
the Emperor's New Grooves, the entire reason it ended up being done as quickly as it was once they figured out what movie they were making was because they already had McDonald's deals in place.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, those McDonald's deals painted you into a corner back in the day.
I mean, they still kind of do now because recently there was like a Happy Meal for like what was supposed to be the new Captain America movie,
Hmm.
uh, but that doesn't come out until February.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah.
And they but I guess like McDonald's was like, nah, we're not waiting that long. We're not wasting any more money. We got to get these out now. I think something similar to that happened. I don't know if it was in Argentina, but for Pixar's next movie, Elio,
Yeah.
They made a
Yeah.
Happy Meal tie-in for that. That was supposed to tie in for the movie when it was supposed to come out this year,
Yeah.
but then they pushed that back to next
I
year.
have
And
a
I guess
yeah.
McDonald's in Argentina were like, "We're not waiting. We
I
gotta
That
have
get."
a
happened. That happened a few times during the pandemic. Like when Minions: The Rise of Gru got delayed by 2 years, they
yeah.
still had to
Didn't they release the
release
Marvels
the Happy
toys?
Meal.
Yeah, and the Marvels as well.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Last summer they had one for the Marvels, but that movie wouldn't come out until November. It was
Yeah.
just like all these like scheduling things that movies kept getting pushed back, but because they had certain deals locked in place, they couldn't have those deals be delayed because then they would
Yeah.
lose more money.
I
So
have a friend whose local AMC still has a poster for Elio.
my
wow.
I have a theater near me that's like literally like 5 minutes driving distance from me that still has like in the outside where it has like the coming soon posters. One of them is Elio,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
it's like already faded. So
Yeah.
that's a shame.
Although back on the topic of Garfield, I will
Yeah.
say that as far as there actually is some merchandise tie-ins that I have seen like
Yeah.
recently because I have seen I saw the toys in the store. They got like really cute plushies of Garfield and Odie, and they even Vic. They made a toy out of
Hmm.
a little nice plush out of Vic, although he looks significantly more bright Garfield orange than he does in the movie, but that's probably to capture the
Have you
attention of the
seen the
kids.
animatronic bus that they have to promote the Garfield movie?
I
I saw that, yeah, but the blink with those big blinking eyes.
Blinking eyes, yeah. So
yeah
they
Hmm.
really compared to Emperor's New Groove, especially, they really went over the top
Sure
in
did.
marketing this for sure, and that's probably why it's doing so well.
yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
mean it's Garfield, so like it's already a character that people recognize. I mean, going back to the merchandise, like I've seen at like theaters. I mean, one of the big you know trends right now with theaters is themed popcorn
Yep.
buckets.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
at Cinemark, my uh, a theater chain that has a location near me, they had a Garfield popcorn bucket where it was literally just like Garfield with like a with his own popcorn bucket that you can like reach
Ooh,
inside.
meta.
Hmm. That's neat.
Yeah, I have
I
that one. It's like down in my
what
basement, but
I saw one where it's just like I think it's just baby Garfield's head and you just put popcorn into it.
Yeah.
yeah,
Those his
Yeah, so
brains.
yeah, so they decapitated him. Sad.
And you take the
That's
top off and it's his brains.
yeah. Then it's like that scene in Indiana Jones where like we're eating the chilled monkey brains.
Yeah.
I saw Burger King had Garfield toys, but it was only, I think, overseas. Because
Yeah, I think it's like a
initially I saw
regional thing.
the ad and I got really excited because there was a Jinx
Yeah.
toy, and I was like, "Oh, I gotta get the Jinx toy!" But they don't.
yes.
Sure, you could probably find it on like eBay
That's
somewhere, but
true.
you probably
Yeah.
need to
I don't
pay
remember
like
if
international post for it.
yeah,
Have to
I don't
see
remember
how
if Burger Kings over
hardcore.
here even do toys anymore because I've
They
never seen
they
ads.
do.
They do
Okay.
just
It's just not what it used to be.
Just don't
yeah.
see ads for them anymore.
Yeah.
No.
Although what's especially weird is now that since even this is a Sony movie. This is a Sony movie that's been like with them for a while. I mean, it's under Alcon Entertainment, but I saw at Walmart they sell those 22 by 34 posters you can get of all movies and shows, and you can get some for the Garfield movie. But
Hmm.
interesting, if you look on that you see right at the little corner there's the Paramount logo. And that's because, since Paramount Viacom bought the rights to all the marketing rights to Garfield back in like a few years ago,
In
like even
2019, they
just
bought Paws Inc. like as a whole.
yeah, like just after like the movie was announced. So you see the logo copyright on there, which and I get it. It's because they own the rights to the character and all the marketing rights. But it's just kind of surreal, even though seeing the Paramount logo on something that is technically not even a Paramount production.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that is weird.
It's funny. Given that Nickelodeon now owns the character, like I would have expected. When I heard that this movie was announced, I'm like, oh, so Nickelodeon's doing it. Oh, it's not them. But wait, I thought they owned the character now. I guess the deal must have like that they started developing the movie before
It
Paws
was like
sold to
2020.
Viacom.
It's been in development like since 2016 at
Ah,
least.
okay, okay.
So that's why you will never get your Garfield Ninja Turtles crossover. Unless you play Nickelodeon All Star Brawl, then
Yeah.
you can have Garfield and the
Oh
Turtles
yeah.
fighting each other.
Yeah, that's the only fighting game where you can play as Garfield, SpongeBob, and the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
I'm
And of
surprised that
course,
game isn't
yeah.
more popular than it is.
And
Um,
that game has also the benefit of now that it has voice acting, so you get to hear Frank Welker doing his Garfield voice,
Oh
and
yeah.
the original Turtles cartoon voice actors and all the other voice actors reprising their roles.
so the credits for this movie, the credits are in multiple parts basically, but the first part of the credits is all videos people basically submitted to a like contest type thing where they
Yeah.
could where they took videos of their cats and
Mm.
sent it to and they play them over the credits of the movie, which is really cute.
Hope they
And
got
then
paid.
yeah, yeah, I'm sure they didn't. And then after that, there's a Jinx song that was cut from the movie that they put in the credits.
That seems to be a trend now with Dindle movies. Like, they cut the song for the main villainess.
Yeah, but they put it in the credits at least. I mean, they didn't
Yeah,
do
Yeah.
that in Emperor's New,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
and you
and
got
it
to see the little
They only put that on the
storyboards,
CD for it.
yeah. Plus, it
which
helps like
which
this
Steven did
being
some of, I believe, those
plus it
scores.
helps this being at the height of Hannah Waddingham's popularity.
Yeah.
They know how good of a singer she is that they
Yeah,
have to
amazing.
utilize it somehow.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
we can't let you got Hannah wanting him to sing. Don't let it go to waste.
Yeah, she's
Which
incredible.
that last note she does at like the end of the song is like it's insane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, she really like she was of all like the performances, she was the one that really like stood out for me the most. Like she really like she you can tell like in like I mean I haven't seen any, how you would see like for like animated films like behind the scenes things where like you would see the celebrity like in like the sound booth recording the
Yeah.
character's lines or whatever, or recording, I guess.
Yeah.
um I have to imagine she must have been like having like the time of her life with
Yeah.
this, like it just like going nuts as this like unhinged villainous character. I could see why that kind of thing would be really appealing for performers. But yeah, no, she was like the probably the of all the actors in it, she was the standout for me personally.
Yeah.
And
And then, oh, go ahead.
I was saying like I was trying to think like what she reminded me of, and then I realized there's a couple elements of this movie, and maybe this is just me, but I was there were a couple elements of this that, and I know some people do when some of the reviews, some people were saying, oh, it's derivative of this and derivative of that. I ain't gonna say it's derivative, but I will say I was getting vibes of other stuff in a respectful manner. Like she like there's very specific parallels that I was having with Aardman stuff when it came to
Mm.
some of this. Like
Hmm.
the villains reminded me like the villains reminded me a lot of like the villains in Flushed Away. Like she was like Jinx was giving me kind of like
Yeah, now that you mention it,
She was giving me Ian McKellen as the Toad vibes. The hench dogs
yeah.
were kind of similar to those
Mm.
hench rats.
Yeah.
The scene at the cheese factory, very reminiscent of like the pie making scene in Chicken Run, or even a little bit of the
Whenever,
sequel.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
And
Sorry.
then in and then with we haven't really gotten much into Odie yet, but his
Yeah.
personality in this felt like almost like, because Odie's a little different in this. He's not
Yeah.
as like traditionally dumb as they like to make him. He doesn't get kicked off the table intentionally, and personality, it's sort of like a combination between like the sort of the smartness and quickness of Snoopy mixed with like
Yeah.
the silent loyalty of Gromit. Like a
Yeah.
lot of Gromit vibes came from him.
Yeah. I
Good
mean, if
point.
anything, I think it's going back to the comic strips, I think Odie in the movie actually feels a little more similar to, I guess, like how Odie is in like I'd say some of the more modern comic strips, where he's not like as dumb as he would have been like 20 years ago necessarily. I've read a lot of strips where like it seemed like kind of Garfield and Odie were more like joking with each other more, and like more kind of
Mm-hmm.
like more like partners, I guess, in certain situations. That's kind of how I kind of how it kind of felt
Yeah.
with how they with their interpretation of Odie here, which and I will say also in regards to the cast, I do appreciate how when they got the actor to be the voice of Odie, Harvey Galarian, I believe his name, Guillermo,
Gian. Yeah,
Guillermo from What We Do in the Shadows.
and the
I
voice
appreciate that
of the dog in
like,
Puss in
keeping
Boots.
with the tradition of what Greg Berger used to do for Odie. He doesn't say anything.
Yeah,
It's just all like barks and yips and stuff like that. Um,
and there are some people kind of interpreting like, oh, is Harvey Guillen cast because he's a name? But I was thinking more like, well, a lot of his roles outside of What We Do in the Shadows, he does a lot of voice work. So you could
yeah,
almost
A
say
lot of
it's like,
dogs specifically.
yeah, a
yeah,
lot of dogs, but he has like a great voice for it. He has a
Because he
which
great voice for
appears, he was in Puss in Boots
yes, as
as
Perito. Which,
Dorito.
by the way,
He,
I got to meet him last year at Fan Expo
oh,
Toronto.
nice.
nice.
He
Had him sign my copy of Puss in Boots. Couldn't have been a nicer guy.
he appears as a dog at the end of the movie Strays, or he doesn't appear. You hear his
That's
voice.
right. Oh,
Huh.
And the dog in Strays is also a dog who thinks its name is the thing its owner yells at it, just like Burrito did at
Mm.
first, which
Hmm.
is very interesting.
they don't explain Odie's name origin, so who knows what it means in this movie's universe.
It sit on the fridge. Call Lyman.
Odie, what was like? Oh, I was gonna say I like that they made Odie more of like a kind of Garfield's already snarky, but Odie's like sort of react to Garfield with his own
Yeah,
brand of
Mhm.
he kind of enables him,
yeah.
with like, his appetite and stuff. It's kind
Yeah,
of
their relationship is. I mean, again, going back to what Michael was saying about how like you he a lot of times Odie is just kind of like reacting to what Garfield is saying. It's very Jay and Silent Bob
Yeah.
in parts.
But what I was gonna say was I mean about Odie and in general, I don't think I just don't think you can do a character that's just dumb anymore.
Mm.
That's just not as fun as a character that maybe is a bit naive or silly, but has more depths to them. So
I feel
am
like you can
glad that
kind of
Odie's not.
stretch it though.
Yeah.
There are ways where like you can make a character be like not like in where they're like not particularly intelligent, but they're not like dumb as a rock.
Yeah.
Uh,
yeah.
Well, the example that always pops into my mind, go figure, is Kronk.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah,
He is kind of dumb, but he's not like obnoxiously dumb.
He's
He's still
endearing
got
though.
he's still got areas of expertise where he's very intelligent.
yeah,
Right.
He has like all the multi-talented, and the TV show just seemed to like build on that more and more to the point where it was
yeah,
ridiculous. So yeah, so I like when a character isn't just dumb. Yeah.
yeah.
I like your. That's interesting, Ryan. I hadn't thought about Gromit, but you're right. I definitely picked up Snoopy vibes from this version of Odie. But yeah, Gromit definitely.
Roland,
You
whenever
Eh.
I
feel
see
that.
when
And I'm
sorry,
not
go ahead.
saying that because they have the same fur color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roland, when his the folds above his eyes are lifted up and you see his eyes, that for some reason, every time I've seen that, including in the poster, it looks like an Aardman character to me.
Yeah.
See. So my point is being proved more.
I think that Margie Malone in Lactose Farms, the security
Yeah.
guard that they tackle with, to me, she's very much an Aardman looking in a good way. Not I'm not
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah,
call
yeah,
her
no, no.
out,
She's
but
like
the shape of her
main
head
villain in
and
Chicken
the
Run.
eyes
Yeah,
and
Yeah,
she's like Mrs. Tweedy from Chicken Run mixed with
yeah,
Frances McDormand from Fargo.
yeah,
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And Cecily Strong like nails that like that Francis McDormand, that Fargo accent very,
Yeah,
very well.
yeah,
yeah,
she's amazing.
that Minnesotan, don't you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I got a
Yeah.
cat in the factory.
There's a cat translator app in this, which is just ridiculous.
I that that
And
that was really they got a lot of mileage in that, which I thought was really funny. Uh,
there's a scene. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, there were a couple of like given that this movie uses a lot of like stuff with phones, one of my favorite recurring gags was John on hold with the missing agency trying to report that his two pets are missing.
Yeah.
Like that's I feel like
That's real.
that's a very Dindal gag.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like
it
very,
is, and it's real. I mean, it's not like everyone's been through the
Relatable, yeah.
experience of being on hold.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
So
and
it's
Mark
very
was the voice
relatable.
of I think Micah, you might have already pointed this out on Twitter, but Mark was the voice of one of the people that John is on hold with. Oh no, no,
Yeah.
wait. No, Mark is the voice of the well, what was it when he's sleeping and
Oh,
feel yourself
Oh,
drift off
the,
into a sea of
the
tranquility.
tranquility
That
thing. Yeah.
oh,
voice.
that was Mark.
That
Ooh.
was Mark.
I knew Mark had to be in it
Nice.
because I think he's done voices in all his things. Um, it's sort of Alfred Hitchcock like
Yeah.
cameo because he was Max
Cats don't
in
dance.
Cats Don't Dance. I've heard conflicting stories about this, but one of the stories I heard was that he was Kitty Yzma. Um, I don't know if that's true.
No, that was
Uh,
actually somebody else,
yeah,
Uh,
but it's not Eartha Kitt for sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
but it's not Mark. I don't think. I thought that was the lady that did the scratch. They just used her because
oh,
I was
I
told
don't
she
know.
sounded funnier. She sounded funnier pitched
I
up than
did hear
Eartha
someone
Kitt
slow
did.
it
So,
down and it sounded like a man, but that doesn't mean anything
I
really.
mean, that
well,
tends to happen a lot with
it's
animation,
possible
where
that
like
they
they just
redid
like
it.
the first voice they use, they just kind of like go with.
But
Um,
he was Morcupine Porcupine, the character that was in Chicken Little for 5 seconds and was marketed
oh,
the
that
heck
was
out.
him.
Yeah.
That
Nice.
makes sense.
And his only lines
Yo,
are just things
Mischief.
that end in O,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
whoa, yo.
How does the kitty cat yo?
Um, what else was it? So there's a scene where Jinx tries to report Vic, and it just comes through as meow meow meow, but it's not like a real cat meow. It's just a person going meow 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 meow
Yeah,
meow.
that's a good gag. That was a good gag.
And this whole thing with the app kind of does explain that that the humans in Garfield can understand what the cats are saying, which is a question people have had over the years. Like, does John understand Garfield? Does anyone understand Garfield? Especially since now in CG, unlike the old cartoons, his mouth moves, so you can't tell
Yeah.
if they're actually talking or not. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
they kind of make it clear with this, but I'm glad that they don't hold on it for too long, and they don't and it doesn't like raise as many questions because again, beautiful cartoon logic.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
That was one of my sequences too. Was the introduction of Marge and the with the little translator thing
Oh,
to do.
nice. Nice.
Nice.
All right. And at the end, there's a little Jim Davis comic strip that basically teases a sequel
Mm-hmm.
without actually, without actually telling you anything about what a sequel might be about, because they probably don't know yet.
And
I have some sequel ideas personally.
I think
Um,
it should be Garfield without Garfield.
Garfield minus
That should be the
Garfield.
sequel.
yes,
Yeah.
make it
where
canon.
it's just John talking to himself.
And
Yeah.
when we say that this whole strip is post credits, I mean it's post credits.
Yeah, it's the very last thing.
Like right after the release by Columbia Pictures, you think, oh, it's done. Oh, but and then you see the strip
Yeah.
Yeah.
that has the little Jim Davis
But there's,
trademark and
I'm pretty
incorporated copy.
positive there's going to be a sequel because it's made so much money.
I think they already
It's
announced
inevitable.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like I don't know if it was officially announced, but I mean,
I know
I
that
can see
Mark
it
is
happening.
interested in doing one. I know I read that.
Yeah.
Which would be pretty great because it would be the first sequel to a Mark Dindal movie Mark Dindal himself actually directed.
Yeah.
Uh,
True.
nothing against, Kronk's New Groove. That movie's fine, and Mark gave that film a big thumbs up.
Yeah, they could
So
do they can make the sequel where Garfield meets a cat that for some reason looks like him. Oh wait,
That there's actually like I said, I have sequel ideas. Going back to what we were saying about like how like with like different forms of animation, Steven, I don't know. I'm sure maybe you've heard of it. There was an old, I guess you could call it like a graphic novel from 1984 called Garfield's Nine Lives,
Mm,
where it's
Yes.
all of Garfield's like previous lives, but it's all different
yeah,
like
And one of
types of
them's
stories,
scary,
different types
right?
of visual aesthetics. They did a version of that as a TV special in 1988. I feel like nowadays, again, in a post Into the Spider-Verse world, I think that could work as like an anthology movie.
yeah.
It's like
Agreed.
different types of animation, it
Yeah.
styles for like each of his lives. It could be like like there's a lot of like creative opportunities one can do with that.
Yeah,
Even if you can like, even if the lives are like different from what was in the book, like there are a lot of really interesting creative possibilities one could make with that.
It
Um,
is. I was gonna say
agreed.
something else, but it's unrelated, so you can finish what you were trying to say if you want. I'm just trying to hold on to the thought. Go ahead. Or
but
you
yeah,
could,
I think that I would be a really neat avenue that I think they should look into.
Yeah,
yeah.
And plus that it could even, for those who are lukewarm about Chris Pratt as Garfield. I mean, the great thing about that is you could bring in other people to be the voice of what's supposed to be Garfield in these other lives.
Yeah.
yeah,
um, there's a lot of really creative opportunities one could make with that. I mean, there could be one where it's like that could be stylized in like an Aardman, in a much more Aardman looking way.
Yeah.
Um, there could be one that's more like minimalistic, one that's kind of like Studio Ghibli anime esque, one that's maybe more down to basics. I always envisioned when it gets to like Garfield's current main life, that's the one where we see his proper origin story. Thank you very much. Of him being born in the in the alleyways of Mama Leone's. I always, for some reason, imagine that just not really done with a whole lot of dialogue, but it's all set to, ironically enough, Billy Joel's scene from an Italian restaurant, where it's just like this like little mini odyssey of like Garfield's current life, where it's like him as a kitten and then getting adopted by John, and then maybe even kind of like bring in little elements of Garfield on the town, where he goes back to what used to be the Mama Leone's restaurant, but it's all abandoned, and his family is still there. His mom is still there, and then they're like reconciling, and then they hear like the construction crews coming in with like the bulldozer about to knock the thing down, and they all pile out.
Yeah.
I had this whole thing storyboarded personally, but I think that kind of that again, it goes
Yeah.
back to what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of really interesting creative possibilities that one can do with this, where it can show that, like, because I feel like Garfield is the kind of character that like you can do anything and put him in any kind of situation as long as you keep like the personality intact.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, I
that's
love the
like a lot. And I think that's kind of like it going against a
That's
lot of
the
the
fun.
criticisms that people have had with this movie, where it's like, oh, it doesn't feel like a Garfield movie. More like, it doesn't matter as long as the character still
yeah.
feels right.
Yeah.
That's all that matters to me.
Yeah.
Can
Absolutely.
I quick piggyback on that really fast, Micah?
Sure.
Can you hold your thought really quick?
Yeah.
Yes, agree. Nine Lives of Garfield, the animated thing is fantastic. I love that piece. Just as a quick little bit of trivia, one of the directors of Nine Lives of Garfield is a gentleman named Bob Scott, and Bob Scott storyboarded on the Garfield movie
Really?
and
Hmm.
rewind all the way back to, I think, after he got out of Cal Arts, he worked for Jim Davis. He worked for Paws Inc. He and his wife,
Huh.
Vicky, they both worked for Paws Inc. for a short period of time. So Bob has a big Garfield pedigree, and he thankfully got to work on the movie. So, anyways, that's it.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Back to the joke Ryan made earlier about the sequel being, I do think it's funny that the previous theatrical Garfield movie before Mark Dindal worked on the movie was a Prince and the Pauper type story
Yeah.
that for some reason they decide, I guess because of the pun of A Tale of Two Kitties, they named it after A Tale of Two Cities, but the plot is clearly the Prince and the Pauper.
Yeah.
because they didn't want to call it the Prince and the Paw dash per.
I'm surprised they
Dash
didn't.
purr,
Yeah.
P-U-R-R.
I'm sure that was like,
Her.
and I'm sure that idea was floated to somebody at one point.
That's too good not
It's
to have been.
it's probably an international foreign title, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Garfield Dos. And
Although if they do something similar to that in the sequel, one idea I had in regards to that, Garfield meeting another cat that's very similar to him. If we're talking fan casting, it could be someone that I personally would have what I would have personally preferred to have been Garfield originally. A One of Chris Pratt's old Avengers Infinity War co-stars, although he might be a bit too expensive, but I'm sure you could probably put the pieces together who I'm talking about.
mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Just won an Oscar.
Yeah.
Cillian Murphy? I'm just kidding.
And this guy was in a talking animal movie too not too long ago.
Somebody
We'll talk
also,
about that.
now I'm totally blanking on his name, but the guy from he was in Community. He's a mustache. He was
Nick
also in The Last
Offerman?
of Us. Huh?
Nick Offerman?
Yeah, somebody suggested he
Yeah.
would be an interesting
Yeah.
Garfield too.
Yeah.
Someone
Oh,
suggested that.
not Community, Parks and Rec, but
Parks and Rec. Sorry.
Yeah.
yeah.
Somebody suggested that. I think in a tweet Tony did about it, someone replied saying that they thought Nick Offerman, Tony Goldmark, who we all know,
Maybe that's
someone replied to his tweet about it saying they thought Nick Offerman would have been a good Garfield.
where I saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought that's a kind
Yeah.
of an interesting notion.
I saw some. I mean, I was thinking this for a few years myself. I was always thinking, what if John Benjamin was Garfield?
Ooh.
Yeah.
He's got, yeah, he has like the right vocal cadence for it. Yeah.
Which is why it's funny because there's this action movie out right now called Boy Kills World, and John Benjamin is in it, but as because the main character does not talk, that Bill Skarsgård plays. But you have John Benjamin doing his inner monologue voice that's based on a video game that he used to play. So it's almost like, oh, instead of John Benjamin being in the Garfield movie, we have John Benjamin in the action movie that you almost think Chris Pratt would have been in instead of Garfield. But that's the world we live in.
And and in a way, it is very Garfield-esque because the character's mouth doesn't move.
Exactly.
You just hear his thoughts.
Have any of you seen the Gain like commercials for like these cleaning products? GAIN. I don't know.
So.
There's a guy. There's
The
there's
guy
a guy in those commercials. I don't know who he is. I would cast him as Garfield because he sounds just like Lorenzo Music.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, I know exactly who you're referring to, Micah. Yeah, his voice is it is very kind of like laid back, um, very laid back cadence. Yeah, I could see that. I can hear his voice as Garfield totally.
But I have no idea what his name is.
I'm sure somebody can point us in the direction of that. But
all right.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything to add about the movie?
My favorite Easter egg in the movie was when Marge sees Garfield and Vic and Odie on the screen and says, Jiminy Davis.
Yeah, I like that.
I didn't even know. I forgot about that. Wow.
I didn't know that was in there. That wasn't in the last screening that I'd seen before actually seeing the final version. And I laughed out loud when I saw when that came on. I thought that was hilarious.
I did love
I
seeing
just realized
I did love seeing Binky the Clown on the cereal box.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Multiple binkies. That made me happy. Although it's funny, I thought when we got to the milk factory and they had this little mini park with the two ox characters. It's it's supposed to look like a farm. So I'm like, where's Orson? Where are all the U.S. Acre characters?
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
Where's my boy Wade?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't do that.
part of the that's going to be part of the Garfield and Friends cinematic universe. They're going to make a U.S. Acres movie.
Yeah,
That's true. That's it.
and then they're all gonna come together in one big crossover movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, the GCEU.
Yeah, yeah, and with a surprise appearance by Norm Nat.
All right. Um, who's got stuff to plug?
I think
I
our
do.
I think well, let's go in alphabetical order. So, Mr. Anderson.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Anderson.
Yeah.
I bet I'm not the first person to make that joke to you.
Sadly, I can't say that you are. Yeah. Sorry.
He won't be the last, or will he?
Um, yeah, so I have this book called Disney in Between that Micah said
Oh,
mentioned.
speaking of cats, we can't.
Yeah,
You guys can't go
I
listening.
have
We got here.
my own little orange Garfield here.
Oh,
Oh,
Um, yes, this book called Disney in Between that I wrote. That's all about the Disney Studios from 1966 to 1986. So post Walt's death to the Eisner, Katzenberg, Wells regime in the early 80s or mid 80s. And so it's kind of talking about how the studio lost its way and how they redefined themselves in a time without Walt. So that's been published by the Old Mill Press. You can currently go to theoldmillpress.com and pre-order a signed copy if you're so inclined.
ooh,
You could also pre-order it at Amazon and Barnes and Noble, but the other one's more preferable if you go to theoldmillpress.com and order it there. And then on September 10th, it'll be out into the world, so it should be available, hopefully all kinds of places. So that's my plug. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah.
very nice, very
Mark.
nice. I have to imagine. I mean, I'm just asking. You go into a little bit for in the book. You I'm sure you go into a bit about like the formation of like Touchstone and how
Mhm.
all that started, right?
Yep, absolutely.
That section I'm really really fascinated about.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stuff in that time period. One of the reasons why I wanted to do it is because that era always gets leapfrogged over in the history books. You know, you talk about Walt's time, Walt's passing, and then the books kind of say, oh, and then they struggled and they put out the Black Cauldron and they put out, Rescuers and Tron. And then Eisner came in, and then you had Little Mermaid and you had Aladdin and you had Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And so there's so much history and so many amazing stories that took surrounding that 20-year period that just nobody's ever heard of. So I thought it would be really, really cool and I think important to document those stories and put it out there. So
cool,
hope
cool.
everybody enjoys it.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna make sure to pick it up.
Thanks.
My name is Marc Aquino. I'm on Twitter at Quiet Time Aquino. I'm on Instagram at Mark_Francisco_Aquino. I have a YouTube channel of my own. I haven't posted anything new on it in about 2 years, but I'm getting ready to post something new on there fairly soon. I have a video coming up where I basically throw my hat into the ring, much like Tony did about 10 years ago, what I would do if I became Bob Iger's successor at Disney.
Mhm.
I would up certain people, give certain people a raise. I'd get, certain creatives would get more to do. Um, I also have a couple videos coming up about about a certain franchise that Disney used to own, um, that rhymes with Mauer Mangers. Um, and yeah, if like I said, for those who want to check that out, it's at youtube.com/Marc Aquino, or like I said, just follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I already said my underscores for those, to get more updates on that. And I was also recently on a podcast talking about the Pixar movie WALL-E, movies to watch before you die. We talked about WALL-E, the whole story involving that. It's a really, really fun listen. I'll send the link to Micah, so that way he can like put that in the description for this. Um, and yeah, there you go.
Cool.
I have a picture of myself at Disney World in 2008 from our manger. I might send if it's needed for a video representation.
Cool.
Also for myself, you can find me, just look for Ryan Walterson on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at R Walterson. That's capital R, capital W, Alterson, Alterson. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at Ryan Walterson 2. You can find me also on Blue Sky, which I'm not frequent on, but I've joined the club on that one. And you can just find me perusing around pretty much every other corner of the internet you're probably familiar with at this very moment. I don't have a piece of merchandise or a video production to plug other than that.
All right. The next big thing that I'm working on is a collaboration with Charlie Marlowe, um, who you listeners may know from Real Time Fan Dubs and Well Bridge Me Princess, as well as the Mystery Shack Look Back podcast. We are creating through the Emperor's New Podcast a Phantomatic movie crossover between the Emperor's New Groove and the Road to El Dorado called The Road to Cuscotopia. And Steven
Yay.
has seen my treatment for that and approved it, basically.
Not that you need my approval.
Yeah. Um, so hopefully look for that in 2025 at some point.
Cool.
Very cool.
I'm going to do this.